The bibliographic base of World Slavic linguistics, iSybislaw, is an effective and important tool of scientific research, which allows to search for information in a specific linguistic segment without dividing it into national schools languages, which of course promotes scientific dialogue in international Slavic studies. iSybislaw is a powerful information retrieval system that allows users to access scientific papers in order to obtain background information and perform a variety of theoretical and practical research tasks. The goal is to analyze the possibilities of optimizing the information retrieval language of keywords iSybislaw. We focus on the problem of ambiguity, variability, and synonymy of linguistic terms, their equivalence to terms in other Slavic languages. The language of information retrieval is the language of keywords. The developers of Polish, Ukrainian, Belarusian models has repeatedly pointed out that terms are the main tool for creating user queries. One of the main tasks of the developers of the Ukrainian model is to create a list of keywords to search for information in Ukrainian language sources, as well as to establish equivalence of such words, especially linguistic terms, in other Slavic languages. Fill in the gaps in the index of keywords caused by the lack of sources from certain linguistic disciplines, and at the same time balance the presentation of such sources, elimination of distortions towards certain linguistic disciplines or areas. The following criteria are taken into account when selecting terms for the keyword dictionary indexers. Take into account frequency, repeatability of word forms in the text, frequency of use exceeds their use in language, information saturation, maximum information in the minimum space, semantic proximity of the word to the topic of the text, synonymies, genus species, relations are considered, and correctness, relevance, conciseness, structural transparency. The hierarchy of these criteria may vary depending on the type of term, its place in the terminological system of a particular language, and the role in the text of a particular document. The functioning of the term as a keyword in information retrieval language involves the elimination of polysemy, synonymy, and variability, which are characteristic for natural languages. However, if descriptors as conditional normative elements are unambiguous, then descriptors hierarchically subordinate to descriptors are capable of logical synonymy, which in turn creates conditions for improving search efficiency. We will illustrate the work with the Ukrainian model on the example of the records of the magazine Culture of the World. Interdepartment collection, Kyiv Institute of Ukrainian Language of the National Academy of Sciences in Ukraine. Usually, each issue is devoted to the language world of one of the Ukrainian writers. One of the possible keywords for many articles should be idiostyle. In the system to the Polish descriptor, there are Russian, Czech, and Ukrainian descriptors. Polish idiostyle, Russian idiostyle, Czech autorski styl, Czech indywidualny styl, Ukraiński авторский стиль, idiostyle. In addition, the authors of some articles use the term idiolect, boyko, types of lexical expressions in the idiolect of Oles Honchar. In iSybislaw, to the Polish descriptor Polish idiolect, there are descriptors Russian idiolect, Belarus idiolect, Ukraiński idiolect. However, in linguistics, the terms idiostyle and its variant individual style and idiolect are used to denote the set of linguistic features of a writer's work, and researchers often use them as interchangeable. Other examples. The equivalence classes of the terms Ursus language and the Ursus language of the work of art testify to the partial equivalence, closeness, of the co-referential terms and the types of their variants. Equivalent linguistic units of different languages that perform the function of denotation form the equivalence class of the term language of mass media. Among the national equivalents
of the Polish term język mediów, in Russian język mass media, Croatian język media, Slovenian język mediów. Instead, there is no Ukrainian term mova mass media, language of mass media, or mova ZMI, language media. And the reason is not the lack of sources in the database, but the lack of a term in the list of keywords in the work's annotations. Analysis of the keywords recorded in iSybislaw provides a basis for constructing a scale of equivalence of terms by the nature and degree of divergence of their content and form, for example, equivalence classes of the language, press, and the language of the media. It is in terminology that the correspondence of form and content must be consistent and non-contradictory. This is required by the specific of professional and scientific communication. Then it will be clear how the terms Russian, мифическое имя, mythical name, мифоним, мифологическое имя, mythological name, Ukrainian anthropocentrism, Russian антропоцентричность языка, anthropocentric language, Russian бранная лексика, swearing, бранные формы, swearing forms, Russian вариантность, variability, вариативность, variability, Ukrainian variant, вариант литературной мовы, variant of literary language, Russian вводная единица, introductory unit, вводное слово introductory word, вводный элемент introductory element, etc. After all, such complex semantic relationship between terms complicate the work of indexers. The variability of terms is also a problem when designing a keyword language. This is relevant for multilingual users and indexers as they need access to an effective information retrieval tool. The creation of equivalence classes takes place within the units of the language of formal description, as well as the language of subject description, which reflects the content of the document. For example, in the formal language, there are different variants of the author's name and surname: Shevelov George, Shevelov Yuri, Sherehuley, etc. In the language of the subject description variants within one language are given: Polish językoznawstwo kognitywne, kognitywizm, lingwistyka kognitywna, and identical in meaning in many languages: Russian cognitivism, когнитивистика, когнитивная лингвистика, English cognitive linguistic, Czech когнитивная лингвистика, Serbian когнитивная лингвистика. All the terms belong to the same class, and each of them illustrates the same documents in iSybislaw. Therefore, the user receives the same search result regardless of the term specified in the search bar, because the search is performed using keyword based on different natural languages. A separate problem of keyword selection and ordering in the ambiguity of terms which represent different semantic relations. For example, nomination 1, procedure, and nomination 2, result. Stylistica 1, style, stylistica 2, disciplina. Without solving the ambiguity problem, the user does not have access to relevant information within a single language. Equivalence classes begin to construct from the collection of terms in one language and then organize them. First of all, eliminate ambiguity. This is very important because without solving the problem of ambiguity, the user does not have access to relevant information within a single language. iSybislaw is a relevant, intelligent search system, constantly improving and therefore increasingly satisfying user requests. The question of the scope of linguistic terms is related to the principles of building the source base of the iSybislaw information search system, in particular to the criteria for entering text of certain styles, genres and types, or to chronological boundaries of the publication of such texts. For example, iSybislaw Database of World Slavic linguistics includes text published from the early 19th to the present day. Its source is made of scientific works, so outside this database are educational and methodological and popular science publications. However, even clearly defined temporal and functional stylistic boundaries of the iSybislaw database sources invariably expand. This evidenced, for example, by the Ukrainian scientific practice of the early 21st century, journal publication, monographs, and collections of the terminological conferences. This expansion of the modern linguistic terminology system is due to the fact that Ukrainian scientific publication of the independence period actively discussed the problems of the retrieval of national languages, terminology, sources, resources, and trends in its development, the feasibility of returning specific terms to. In general, a thorough linguistic analysis of the most common models of terminological units, ways of their semantic differentiations in the iSybislaw system is required. Solving the problems of ambiguity, avoiding synonymy, and variability of terms in information retrieval language involves finding out the degree of similarity of terms, the activity of their use in the language practice, and in iSybislaw text, which in turn will ensure effective search in the system. In addition, the search for a keyword in iSybislaw not only represents the state of elaboration of the linguistic problem in Slavic studies, but also serves as a scientometric basis on which to establish the citation index of a particular linguist. To date, there have been no such information retrieval databases with powerful Slavic languages models for the humanities. Thus, the evolution of the bibliographic has contributed to a more effective implementation of information needs of the user. The prospect for iSybislaw developers is the creation of a bank of Slavic linguistic terminology and its basis a new treasure of Slavic linguistic terminology in the digital space. Working on such a terminological bank requires from its developers not only linguistic competence, but also mastery of modern technologies for processing language information.